think a lot of times when I pictured this moment when I would find out I was pregnant, it would just be the most emotional, joyous moment, sort of just like, getting engaged or getting married or any of these other big life events that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to feel a certain way.
Ignite your best life. Yoga is the spark.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to this very special episode of the Yoga Hacks podcast. If you caught my most recent YouTube video, and if you didn't, we'll link it right here because it's kind of a fun video. I tried to put a lot of thought and creativity into it. But if you saw it, you know I am pregnant. And I wanted to use this podcast as an opportunity to sort of talk about the pregnancy for the first time publicly, fill everyone in on how this happened. I'm sure you have some ideas how this happened, but how this happened for me in particular, and to also just give you some updates on what to expect in terms of the channel and yoga and prenatal yoga and YouTube and Uplifted and just everything. So I wanted to start by saying that it has been so challenging for me to keep this a secret and not share it, especially with all of you in the Uplifted community, because I feel like that community is just my life and I share everything on there. And with pregnancy, it's and I want to talk so much more about all these things, but it's something that you just don't really tell people until a couple months in. And I think this is in part, well, let's start at the beginning and give you guys some additional just general updates. As you can see, I'm really excited and so excited and eager to connect with those of you who are our moms, of which I know we have so many in our group, and those of you that are currently pregnant. So first things first, YouTube is not going to become this prenatal yoga channel overnight or anything like that. Those of you who have been practicing with me for a long time can basically expect the same YouTube channel. I have a huge New Year's challenge for next year that's already filmed. We have a fall challenge on YouTube coming. Everything is sort of continuing as normal. This is in part because I've filmed bajillions of videos and content before I found out I was pregnant. And then the first trimester of pregnancy, and even for me now in my second trimester, I am really able to practice my normal practice. So I might look a little bigger on screen, but I'm pretty much able to do everything that I was doing before. So if you have been just enjoying YouTube and my typical yoga classes, none of that's changing. It's all staying. However, I am going to be adding and layering in the occasional prenatal class on YouTube just because I want to share my take on prenatal yoga and my experience. And I'm also going to be releasing 2 prenatal yoga DVDs and programs. The first one will probably come out in the fall, and the second one will come out later in the new year. The first one is focused on trimesters 1 and 2, and the second one is focused just on the third trimester and preparing for labor specifically. So those of you that are in Uplifted will get access to that. You'll get access early, and of course I'll be updating you all on how you can get those exclusive DVDs and programs if you're interested. Now, if you are pregnant right now and you want to connect and read the things I'm reading and just sort of jump into the whole natural childbirth yoga pregnancy landscape with me, and get early access to some of these prenatal yoga classes that I'm going to be putting out, the thing you want to do is go to pregnantandpowerful.com and put in your email address there, and you'll instantly get sent my reading list, as well as just a bunch of other great resources that I'm compiling for all of you, or I have been compiling for all of you. There will be some YouTube videos coming out just about my favorite products I've been using, not sponsored, just for me, for fun. Favorite products I've been using, favorite tips, a lot of info about what I've been eating, because I had probably the easiest first trimester ever. And I think a lot of that is due to just how I decided to take care of myself and exercise and eat throughout that first trimester. So there will be YouTube video, like fun lifestyle video tips with all of this for you guys. But in the meantime, I want anyone who's pregnant to just be able to connect and get information as quickly as possible. And if you go to pregnantandpowerful.com, you'll get the reading list and a bunch of info. And I'll also then be emailing you any pregnancy related content, videos, that kind of thing, but only if you sign up so I know that you're interested. Otherwise, I'm not sending that to everyone. So this was an unplanned pregnancy. This pregnancy was a big surprise for me and my husband. I wasn't planning on having a child in the immediate future. My husband and I definitely wanted to have a family in the next year or two or three. And I could see us potentially starting to try, maybe in 2018 or late 2018. So this has been a huge surprise for us. It definitely wasn't something we were aiming for, trying for in our game plan. Some of you who have watched my videos about yoga for your period or yoga for PMS, you know that I've mentioned that I choose not to use birth control. I think if you like birth control, that's great and you should use it, but I have never used it, and I've always used alternative forms of pregnancy prevention, I guess you could say, and those have always worked extremely well for me. But I guess the universe had other plans, or I also got very busy and not as focused on all the things I do in that department. How did I find out I was pregnant, I guess, is maybe a fun story to share. So the reality is I didn't know I was pregnant. And actually the very, very first person who I actually can credit with noticing something different is my cameraman, Martin, because we were filming the beginner yoga DVD, which by the time this podcast airs is definitely going to be available on Amazon and as a digital download. It is so great. It's like the perfect Christmas gift to give all your non-yogi families and friends, because it's me basically teaching a student, a young man who's never done yoga before in his life and is like super, super stiff and like just like your typical male guy, and it's a really cool series. Check that out if you haven't. We'll put the link below. So I was filming that series, and because I'm teaching him, he's a total beginner. It's called Pure Beginner Yoga. I wasn't even doing any poses. So usually, as you know, if you're in, if you practice with me, that I'm teaching and working out at the same time. And in this DVD, I was just talking. He was the one working out because I was really trying to focus on really cueing and teaching pure beginners. So I wanted it to be all about him doing the yoga and me standing on the sidelines. And even though I was just talking, not doing any yoga myself, my cameraman noticed that I was really out of breath. And he kept sort of asking me, why are you so out of breath? Are you okay? Not in a mean way, just he noticed right away, because we work together a lot on different series and projects. He noticed that there was something unusual. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, I guess when I'm not doing yoga myself and talking a bunch, I actually get more tired. That's weird. And I just went on with my life. And more weeks passed. In that interim, I like to share, because I think this is important to share, because I think a lot of women, and even me later after I found out I was pregnant in my first trimester, had a lot of fear around, is there something I could do to hurt the baby? Is there something I could do to jeopardize this pregnancy? And I think especially even in our yoga practice, whether it's breath of fire or breath retention, you can be really nervous about what's safe, quote unquote. And let me just tell you, in the early weeks of my pregnancy, I was filming our Kundalini challenge month. I didn't know I was pregnant. I was doing tons of breath of fire. I was doing tons of Kundalini yoga. And of course, I'm here and I'm still pregnant. And I'm going to go a lot deeper into Kundalini yoga and pregnancy, probably in its own separate podcast or video, because I've also completed an 100-hour prenatal specialty training, which is great, and it had a huge focus. It was with one of the foremost Kundalini teachers in the world. I really wanted to do a Kundalini-centric prenatal yoga program, just because I feel like I already knew a ton about Vinyasa yoga for prenatal, because I'd studied it 2 or 3 times in various trainings. So more on that later, but just as an FYI for anyone listening to this who is pregnant, it is actually safe to do breath of fire and Sat Kriya and a couple of the other more intense Kundalini yoga breaths until 120 days after conception, which is a little bit after the first trimester if you're trying to kind of do the math. So again, you need to listen to your own body. If it's not feeling good, obviously don't do it. But according to Yogi Bhajan, up until 120 days, you are actually cleared and it's okay to do breath of fire, Sat Kriya, and some of those more cleansing breaths if it feels okay to you. And of course, once I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to continue doing them because I enjoy them, but I just took the intensity down a notch, obviously. So meanwhile, I still don't know I'm pregnant. I'm doing a lot of Kundalini yoga. I went on a big ski trip with my family where I was skiing aggressively every single day at very high elevation. And of course, I think this is the way a lot of people find out they're pregnant is through a missed period. However, my cycle has always been a little bit irregular. I've never been a clockwork person ever, and my cycle is always kind of longer than the average cycle. So I never really felt worried. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a sign that something's happening. I just, thought, I'm sure it's coming soon, right? And then a lot of the other symptoms I had, a little bit of breast tenderness, feeling a little tired and icky, I thought was PMS and that I could be potentially getting my period any day now. So it wasn't until I continued to do yoga and teach that I felt out of breath. It was really the out of breath piece. I also remember doing one sort of twist where I was lying on my belly and twisting away. I was sort of doing like a cobra and looking over one shoulder, and that felt very wrong. I also remember a girlfriend of me telling me when she found out she was pregnant, I always asked, because I think it's fun to ask friends. I said, well, how did you know you were pregnant? She said she noticed that she just was subconsciously taking her hand to her belly all the time to like connect with the baby in a weird way. And I sort of noticed myself doing that once or twice, like when I was getting a cup from the cupboard or getting a pot or pan with one hand, my other hand would sort of instinctively go to that area. So I started to think that maybe something was up. Throughout this whole time, I was also feeling very tired, much more tired than I usually am. I was having a lot of trouble getting up early, getting out of bed. But I'm sure like many of you yogis listening, my energy levels very much tied to the sun and nature and how bright it is outside. And at that time where I lived, we were going through a season of just incredible rain and fog. So I attributed perhaps a lot of this lethargy and tiredness that I was feeling that it could just be the weather. The final straw, and I'll never forget this moment because I was teaching downtown in San Francisco, an advanced class, and I was demoing Utkatasana twist, chair twist, which is a very challenging pose. But again, I'm very used to talking and teaching yoga and running around the room and doing all these things simultaneously. It's never, ever been an issue. And I was demonstrating this chair twist at the front of the class, and I was so out of breath. I thought I was going to like pass out or fall out of the chair twist, or I needed to come out of it. It just was like this lightning bolt moment in the chair twist where I was in Utkatasana, I was in that low squat coming into the twist, and it was just like a lightning bolt of intuition, insight, I don't know, just hit me right in the forehead and jolted through my whole body in that moment. And I knew something was up. I just knew it. I knew I was potentially pregnant. And somehow I made it through teaching the rest of the class because I literally had this realization, accepting that, whoa, something is going on here in the middle of this class. So somehow I got everyone through the rest of the class, and somehow I got home. And of course, it was quite late at night by the time I came home, so nothing was open. There was no way for me to buy a pregnancy test or anything like that. But I went to sleep. I somehow made it. And then the first thing I did the next morning was I went and got a test, came home, and my husband was obviously worried because he knew I wasn't, feeling so great and that something was potentially up. But we completely dismissed the idea that this might actually be happening or I could really be pregnant. So I took the test while he was at work and I was home by myself, and I read the test and the test said not pregnant. So I just felt very relieved, and I also sort of was upset with myself because I just thought, why have you been so tired? Why have you been so lazy? There's no excuse for this. So I really riled myself up that day, and I think I did a pretty tough workout, and I really sat down at my desk and worked as hard as I possibly could, sort of trying to get myself out of what felt like this funk. And then my husband came home while I was still working and on a call, and he went to the bathroom and he saw the test that I had taken because I just left it in our bathroom. And one thing to know is that I am not the best. I have a very mild dyslexia. So I'm not great at reading instructions. Sometimes I mix up left and right, not when I'm teaching yoga, but in daily life. I'm sure sometimes actually when I'm teaching yoga too. I sometimes invert letters and numbers. It's something, I've talked about this in my teacher training, but I'm pretty open about. It doesn't affect my ability in a severe way day to day. But what had actually happened is I had misread the box and the test completely. Also because, of course, I just bought a cheap test that, of course, didn't just say yes or no. It had, if it makes some shape, it means something. And if it makes some other shape, it meant something else. And the way I interpreted the shape being creative and weird, I was like, oh, this means no. And my husband, when he came home, he said, this test is positive. And I said, no, it's negative. And he said, no, I'm reading the back of the box. This is definitely positive. And we just had this moment of sort of looking at each other in concern. I did do something which I would suggest everyone do in this situation, which was I bought a pregnancy test that had 2 tests inside the box. So we had another test, thank goodness. So always buy 2 or buy a pack. And so we did the second one, and it was positive as well. So then it was just a very strange moment because I had already gone through this whole high of the night before, thinking that I was, taking the test, being sort of relieved that I wasn't. And then here we were again looking at each other and realizing that it seemed like I was. And I want to share this because the emotions at this time for me were definitely not joy. It was definitely awe, but it was very much confusion. And I think a lot of times when I pictured this moment when I would find out I was pregnant, it would just be the most emotional, joyous moment, sort of just like, getting engaged or getting married or any of these other big life events that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to feel a certain way. And luckily, thanks to my yoga practice, I didn't judge the moment or try to put any particular big meaning on top of the moment. I just tried to stay really present with my feelings, but it definitely wasn't this typical movie moment where everyone's joyful and jumping up and down. It was shock, it was awe, it was terror, it was confusion, it was misunderstanding. It was very different from, I think, what I would have pictured in my head as the fantasy of sharing and finding out this moment with your partner. So I just wanted to share that just in case anyone else out there maybe had a similar experience of not feeling elated with joy the instant they found out this information, because it is a lot to process and digest, especially when it is unplanned, unexpected. So over the course of the next several weeks, I went through a process of really wrapping my head around what was happening. And I think anytime that you have a plan for the next year or the next 16 months, and many of our plans included financial renovations that we wanted to do to our home that we bought, so many things in so many ways where we just didn't feel ready or just didn't feel like this was the right time. And I'm so passionate about everything I'm doing with Uplifted and my yoga and traveling a lot, and it took a long time for me to let this all sink in. And I did go to a physician. I went to my doctor, and when I went in, I was 6 weeks pregnant at that time. So they were able to see that the baby was there. They had me come back, I think a week or 10 days later, to see if the baby had a heartbeat, and it did. And of course, I'm sure most women can relate to this moment, but when you do see the baby on the ultrasound, or you just have that moment of seeing that it's there, that it's alive, it's an incredible moment, and you never forget that moment. I felt so blessed and connected and honored that this was happening. However, at the same time, there was a lot of logistical concerns. So one of the things in our culture is that you don't tell people that you're pregnant when you're pregnant. You wait, just because so many, I think it's 1 in 3 pregnancies end in miscarriage, and that's completely normal, and you go on to have healthy children after that. It's just a completely natural thing. And I think it's wonderful because more and more women are speaking out about the process of having a miscarriage and then going on to have a successful pregnancy, so it has a lot less stigma around it than it used to. But I think that chance, knowing that the pregnancy might not be viable or that something could happen, really holds you back from wanting to shout it and tell everyone from the rooftops, which is why I decided to stay really, really quiet, because there was part of me that didn't want to jinx it. There was part of me that just was still scared and sorting out my own feelings about it. So the 2 people I did tell were 2 close girlfriends of mine, one who is pregnant herself and who's actually a very close yoga friend of mine and a former yoga student of mine. And she was really helpful to talk to, because being 3 or 4 months ahead of me in her pregnancy, she was just able to, and she had been wanting and trying to get pregnant, but she was just a great sounding board to talk through some of my initial emotions with. And then I called another really good friend of mine who lives in New York, who just gave birth to her 2nd child. So she was someone who was a mom and is just very similar to me, and I felt like I could really talk to her honestly about all the things I was excited about, concerned about. So touching base with those 2 women. And it's interesting, I didn't call my best friend or my closest female friends, who just happened to be my bestie. I really selected 2 women who, again, one who was in the pregnancy process and one who was a mother. They felt like the 2 people, even though they're maybe not my closest friends on a day-to-day basis, they felt like the 2 people that I really felt could support and hold space for me based on what I was going through in that particular moment. So I'd encourage you, if you do decide to reach out and tell some early friends or family, to really think, because it's not necessarily, I think, the person who happens to be your best friend or is closest to you that is maybe the best support person when you're going through something so specific like this. So talking to them was really helpful. And then, of course, I wanted to tell my mother. And I actually told her, I think around the same time or slightly thereafter, and she was incredibly supportive and kind and, excited, but just respectful of how I was feeling in anything I chose and decided to do, and just being able to touch base with her and let her in on what was happening was very, very special. And then we waited to really tell anyone else for an extremely long amount of time. And if you're pregnant or if you've been pregnant, you know that it is a journey. There is so many different genetic tests you can do. The medical system, and I think our medical system is wonderful in so many ways, but it can make you feel very tentative about your pregnancy for so long, because it's sort of just like, well, after this next test, you'll know everything's fine. And after this next ultrasound or exam, you'll know everything's fine. And at a certain point, I realized I really had to stop buying in to that mindset and methodology and just really step into trusting that the baby was fine, I was fine, that this was meant to happen. And that's a lot of trust to take on. But again, yoga was very helpful in this process. And I started to really educate myself about pregnancy and natural childbirth. I started reading that actually these ultrasounds that I had been doing, just going to the doctor, could actually, no one knows, but they could be hurting the baby. all of a sudden, it was like I had to catch up on all this info that I had missed, because I think a lot of people, when they're planning to get pregnant, they're excited about it and they're reading the literature and they're already thinking about how and where they want to give birth and what kind of care they want to receive. This was just totally out of left field for my husband and I. So there was just a massive amount of catch up, and reading the right books and being pointed in the right direction by my yoga friends, my yoga community, and then eventually all the women in my training, and from Gurmukh, my teacher, who I did the 100-hour prenatal with, was the best thing I could have possibly done, because they pointed me in all the right directions. And of course, after connecting with them, I now have a midwife. I'm, doing one ultrasound here and there, but really, really cutting back and looking way more into how I can manage this pregnancy naturally. And that's really the information I want to share with all of you, and especially you listening if you're pregnant. So head on over to that pregnantandpowerful.com link and get the reading list, because I think however you want to manage your pregnancy and however you want to give birth and however you choose to parent is a completely personal decision. And I think your yoga practice should just empower you to make the right personal decision for you. So I don't want to propagate any particular way of doing things, but I do want to say that I think knowledge is really power when it comes to pregnancy, birth, and I'm sure parenting as well. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know that midwives and home births are an option and the actual statistics around that, it's something that you'll just never consider if you don't if you just read the books that are in Barnes and Noble that are like What to Expect When You're Expecting and a lot of other just sort of popular books. You won't see the Ina May Gaskin books and some of these really incredible books that talk about birth in a more natural way. So again, however you decide to do things is great, but I think exposing yourself to the mainstream view and the other views that are out there is really important. And I would have never, even being a yoga teacher and super connected, the other alternative ways of handling pregnancy and birth were not immediately apparent to me. I mean, of course, the first thing I did is call my doctor. That's what anyone would do, and that's the right thing to do. But I think the more that you can get information and talk to people who've handled pregnancy and birth a variety of different ways, know that there's tons of options in terms of how you want to handle this process and not just go with the flow, I think is really, really important, because at the end of the day, ultimately, our doctors and hospitals are wonderful. I'm so glad we have them in a case of emergency. I feel so blessed to live in this time period and this society. But ultimately, your doctor and those hospitals, their number one priority is to not get sued. That's the thing they're really focused on. And they, unfortunately, the way the system works, they don't have time to really connect and get to know you on an individual level. And and pregnancy is so individual. I think the average OBGYN appointment during pregnancy is 7 minutes long. So if you want a different experience than that, there are so many options. And I'm now pursuing a lot of those options. And again, check out the link, the Pregnant and Powerful link, and get resources on all of that if you're interested, because it was very shocking to me how little I knew about this world coming into it as an outsider. And now after the 100 hours of training and the 30 books I've read and everything, I'm feeling really great, but I also feel scared for just everyone out there who even is a yogi but just doesn't have access to this information, because you just wouldn't unless someone shared it with you, like a friend shared it with you. So I really want to be that friend for you if you're interested. So I hope you enjoyed this special podcast on how I found out I was pregnant, what's coming with this big life change in terms of YouTube and Uplifted and everything. And I just wanted to make sure that I connected and got to update everyone and share the story. And if you're curious about my first trimester, how that went, what I ate, because I've had the easiest pregnancy so far, just feeling amazing, feeling so happy, little to zero morning sickness in that first trimester. I want to share all of that info with you. So go to the pregnantandpowerful.com link to sign up to get the videos about that, and there will be videos about, or podcasts about, each trimester and what I'm eating and doing specifically for those of you that are interested. So thank you so much for being on this journey with me. I'm so excited to learn now that I can talk about this more publicly. I'm so excited to learn from so many of you in my community who've been pregnant, been through the birth experience, are parents. I know that you all are going to be an incredible resource for me to learn so much from as I go through this journey. It makes me just even more grateful and happy that the community that we've created together exists, and definitely look forward to more content like this, and sign up at that Pregnant and Powerful link if it's something you're interested in and want to make sure you get updated about. Otherwise, it's going to be classes as normal and just normal updates on all yoga things. We have a cool fall challenge, an amazing New Year's challenge, videos still coming out every week. Yes, there'll be the occasional prenatal video here and there, but things are pretty much moving on as normal. And I'm so excited to be sharing this special time in my life with all of you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. And leave me a comment down below with whatever questions you have about pregnancy, yoga, what's coming, any personal questions for me, because I can answer them all in a next episode if you let me know what you're most interested in hearing about. Have a beautiful day. Don't forget to get grounded, to do yoga, to slow down. Sending you so much love from my heart to yours. Namaste.
This episode was brought to you by Uplifted. Try Brett's membership community for people who want to enrich their life through yoga for free at brettlarkin.com/uplifted. Yoga obsessed? Join Brett for yoga teacher training at brettlarkin.com/train. And don't forget to give back. Like this podcast, leave a rating or review. Share this with someone you love.
Remember, now is the time to dedicate yourself to what matters most. From my heart to yours, namaste.